that's enough about the Kings, though. Tyson Mulisk asked, the Raptors now have like 10 guys who are 6'9" with a 7-foot plus wingspan. What does the math tell us about this type of roster construction? I think let's ask about what this says about their direction. I think the math says that they have a lot of guys who are 6'9" with a 7-foot plus wingspan. There's not a mathematical way to look at this beyond that. I would assume they're trying to be disruptive and ultra stingy on defense is just what this direction shows.
The last time we saw a team pose with players showing off their wingspans across the entire length of the court, it was the Milwaukee Bucks. And you can check my notes here, but I believe the Milwaukee Bucks are the reigning champions. So, like, to me, this means that Toronto is going to win a title in like 5 years. I think that's what the math says.
That's foolproof in my that's idiot proof. That's a fantastic way to look at it. I never did. So congratulations to the Raptors. More seriously, though, this seems right in line with just how they've always kind of wanted to build their team. Like, you just look at having OG Anunoby, Yuta Watanabe, like taking a flyer on a guy like that. They've always liked these guys around that size and like not viewing Pascal Siakam as a center. So I'm very interested what they wind up look like defensively. I still think their offseason was just bizarre because they definitely could have gotten more for Kyle Lowry at the trade deadline. I just assumed that they kept him either meant they might keep him, that he wanted to come back. Clearly he did not. Or they were going to line up a better sign and trade option, which they did not. This team is still going to be really good unless they bust it up, which I don't think they should because, Scotty Barnes is a project, but Adam, I mean, the minutes with...
I loved him as a prospect.
Freddie, like we're friends. Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, just Chris Boucher.
And Chris Boucher,
is going to be just... Look, Ken
That's
Burke's
exactly
there
where
too.
I was going to go. I was going to name the exact same quintet and say that VanVleet, I think, is one of the most underrated defensive presences in the NBA. Barnes is ready to make an immediate impact on the defensive end, which is typically easier to do than to make an immediate offensive impact for a lot of these wing guys. Anunoby and Siakam, Boucher, and like you can still throw
Malachi Flynn. That dude just is an Energizer
Precious
Bunny on
Achiuwa, another switchable big. Like this roster is fun. I don't know how much upside it has in terms of like star power. This guy is going to be a number one option, but this feels very much like 2004 Pistons kind of basketball where the pieces are so good and so malleable that they could be a legitimate title contender without a true star.
That is a very apt comparison. Like 2000, they're just going to be very smash mouth. It feels like. I do wonder what their shooting's going to look like. What kind of leads me to my question about the Raptors, which also leads into the question we have about the Dallas Mavericks. What are you doing with Goran Dragic if you're the Raptors? And I want to make it clear that unless it's post-trade deadline and you don't want him, weren't able to find a deal for him, you're not buying him out. It just doesn't make any sense. But as of right now, if you were Toronto, would you rather keep him or would you rather try and find a new home for him?
I would keep him. I think he's actually a really good fit for this roster construction now. I have serious worries about his long-term efficacy because the decline seems so obvious. The explosiveness isn't quite there. The finishing at the rim has been diminished a little bit. The injuries have started to take a hold. But because he's going to be, in all likelihood, a backup point guard on this team, you can deploy him in smaller bursts, get that explosiveness out of him because he isn't shouldering as large a burden, and you're surrounding him, regardless of who is on the court, with quality defenders who make sure that he doesn't have to expend too much energy on the side of the court he's less comfortable playing. It feels like a really good fit to me. It's an overpaid fit, but that's neither
for a year
there because he's on the roster.
I still think it's ridiculous that the Mavericks, this is per reports, I think Tim McMahon said it on the Hoop Collective podcast, that they don't want to give up Dwight Powell in a trade for Goran Dragic because Goran Dragic is overpaid, making almost as much as Dwight Powell this season and next. Dwight Powell must have very good connections within the Mavericks organization if that's just the thought process there.
I think Powell's a good player, but yeah.
Goran Dragic, I think, gives them some north-south jet fuel, which they need. Like, replaces that from Lowry, and I really think they need his shooting. Just looking at the roster of this team, who are you counting on to shoot at a noticeably above-average mark from three? Fred VanVleet,
Gary Trent Jr.,
and maybe OG at this point has deserved that type of credit. But like,
but even then, like those are just the corner threes. Like you're not counting him as a wing spacer.
No, and like he can do more with the ball in his hands, but he's not hitting pull-up jumpers yet. That's VanVleet and Dragic at this point. Maybe Gary Trent Jr. a little bit, but that's not really his forte. So I like his fit. But question comes from Miguel Zara. Who is your dream get for the Mavericks? Now, if we want to do like really pipe dreamy, if the Raptors decide to tear it down, Fred VanVleet makes too much sense for the Mavericks.
Before we answer this question, can we stay with the Raptors for 1 second? Because I actually want to ask you a VanVleet question. He has increased his scoring average every year in the NBA from 2.9 to 8.6 to 11.0 to 17.6 to 19.6. All of a sudden, he finds himself on a roster where he is the unquestioned go-to scorer. Where do you set the over-under this year? I mean, like, is 25 points per game unreasonable here?
Unreasonable, no. A place to set the over-under, that seems a little high. Just because you still do have Siakam there, who's probably just going to get a higher usage or use more of the possessions as a passer, if he's not taking more shots. It's certainly possible. I'm curious. I don't know what Toronto aspires to be this season. So is this going to be like minutes shenanigans where him and Pascal Siakam, if they stay there, are averaging like 27 minutes a game or something like that? So if he plays,
I have no idea what to expect.
Zero. Kyle Lowry left, and I still have no idea what the Raptors are doing. Not in a way that I hate it. Again, I don't necessarily like the return on Lowry, but they're still a good team on paper. You kept Masai. I can't fail them for the offseason if you kept Masai. So,
and this seems like if you're picking a team in the NBA that no one is going to want to play, it's them or Miami.
Yeah,
not necessarily. I mean, they're not; those aren't the two best teams, but those are the teams on your schedule where you're like, "Wow, I better schedule some ice fast sessions after this game."
I'm 100% with you, and I don't think they should tear it